Welcome to Motivated to Lead podcast, helping you become a better leader. I'm your host, Mark Klingstein. Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining us for our podcast. This is Mark Klingstein with SEMA Partners. And this week, we're going to revisit 6 different conversations that we've had in previous episodes with leaders as they share their answer to the question, what they wish they would have known when they were 22. If you would like to see full interviews, please visit motivatedtolead.com. Hope you enjoy these conversations.
I would have been an engineer.
Okay.
I think you and I have talked, we've been talking for years now, Mark. I think you and I talked when I was going to college. No one really spoke to young women that much about being engineers or science degrees. I was asked, do I want to be a teacher? Do I want to be a nurse? I didn't want to be either. And I kind of fell into my career, fortunately. So I would have been an engineer, but I also would have told myself to just relax, breathe. I'm intensely a type A person. And while that's good, that drive is wonderful, sometimes you can overdo it. And I would also tell myself to just ignore the naysayers, stay away from the negative people, stay true to your path, and just, march on.
I think the advice that I'd probably give is, life in general, and whether that's business or personal, actually, it's really about overcoming adversity, right? And I think everybody gets exposed to adversity, some sooner in life than others, but it really is how you respond to that adversity. And I think you learn a lot about yourself and how that develops you. So, I think in the early days of life, I think it's, you take these things as, gosh, the world's going to end tomorrow. And as you get older, you kind of put it in perspective that there's got to be a learning moment here. And so I think that'd probably be some advice that I'd give myself is, don't be too alarmed with some of the adversity. It probably is going to lead to, a better place.
I would say this might sound a little, I don't know, it's okay to start at the bottom and work your way up, and that you shouldn't underestimate the value of the skill set you learn starting at a very junior position and working your way up. And I know that's hard today because we have so many tools at our disposal, and in fairness, the curve is faster now. And with that goes expectations. But I think it's fair to say that there's a lot of power and value that comes in those tools that you learn in positions that are more junior than what you feel you may be ready for.
There are a lot of key lessons that I can think of that would extend way beyond a 30-minute podcast. But I would say there are a couple of things. While it's important in a leadership role to develop a compelling strategy, for example, that's engaging to employees and things like that, I think along the way it's really important to also say no and learn how to say no to things. I mean, there are a lot of really great ideas, and I think one of the key competencies to have is to know what to say no to. And so I would argue that saying no is something that's really, really important. The other thing is you have to be careful about falling in love with ideas. There are many examples that I could point to in my career where I, especially in the area of acquisitions, because you're being sold by firms that are very adept at selling, and some of the ideas are really compelling, but you have to step back and think logically about really what is the possibility of actually integrating that capability into your broader offering. And you have to remember at the end of the day, no matter how you want to spin all of this, that you have to stay execution focused. And so that would be my other key lesson. I think no matter what, with the firms that I've worked with, whether a large privately held firm or a really large corporation like United Health Group or Wells Fargo or FIS, at the end of the day, you're paid to execute. And so that has to stay top of mind. And I think as a part of that, as a leader, you still have to inspect what you expect. So you can set these visions out there, you can put together these very creative strategic plans, but you really have to continue to inspect and make sure that you're actually executing on the plan that you've put out there. And I think what goes hand in glove with that is, you have to foster a culture of accountability amongst the leadership team. Mm-hmm. So those are a couple of things. And then I think one that's obvious, and you've probably heard this from many, many of your folks that you've talked to in your podcast, but you really have to hire well. I think hiring is a key element to all of it. You've got to have the right people on your team. And this is where I would say, hiring Seema or hiring somebody like yourself, Mark, to help in that process is critical. But I think part of it is you have to think about describing the role, about what you're expecting this person to be doing on your team, and be very honest about that. Use a third party in order to sort of help you assess whether or not the person actually fits against what your expectations are for that role. I would also argue you have to hire diversity. And I'm not just saying that because that's the thing to say these days. Right. I really believe it. And when I say diversity, I think about, sure, it's gender, it's ethnic diversity, but it's also age, and it's also people who come from different disciplines, because it helps to give you better perspective about the types of business problems that you're solving for. So I think those would be the key lessons. And then the final one would be keep networking. Networking is just so important. It's important to have mentors, and it's important to have connections that extend across and around, various other disciplines.
I think the sort of advice that's helpful is different at different stages of your career. Mm-hmm. I think advice that's helpful for young people is be a sponge. Learn as much as you can. There's very little that you will learn today that will not be useful at some time in your career. So never give up the opportunity to learn, and keep learning. That's probably the number one advice for young people. And then part of learning is it's all very well to follow the wisdom of others, but it's just as important to follow your own direction. In my experience, there are a lot of very successful people who confuse success with luck. And if you read the books of many successful entrepreneurs from the critical eye of someone who's lived that journey, you realize that more often than not, those stories are as much luck as hard work. Mm-hmm. So don't be afraid of luck. Luck's fantastic, but you can't guarantee it. So you have to work hard as well. And finally, don't be afraid of failure. I think the statistics are that about 90% of companies that start fail within 5 years. And part of the real strength and value of the US entrepreneurial system is that failure is not necessarily punished, but a failure with a valiant effort is often rewarded with the opportunity to succeed next time. Sure. So don't be afraid to fail.
Do everything you can, work as hard as possible, and don't listen to the people that tell you something can't be done. If I had told people at 22, 23 years old when I was a sales rep that I'd be the CEO of the company, they probably never would have believed it. They never would have seen that as the career path. Mm-hmm. But you work hard, you do all the right things, you learn as much as you can learn from as many people as possible, and you put yourself in the right position so when the opportunity knocks, you're ready. I tell a lot of people that it's kind of like the Tom Brady story, right? No, he was a 6th-round draft pick. No one thought he would ever see the field. Drew Bledsoe gets hurt. He steps right in, and now he's arguably the greatest of all time. But if he wasn't ready at that moment, it never would have happened. If he waited for the moment to try to get ready, it would have been too late. And I think that at 22, they were all, when I first met my wife, right around that age, I told her that this was the goal someday, and she might have laughed at me early on. But a lot of people thought that, it's one of those things. There's so few of them. It's so hard to do. And my advice would be, put your head down, do your job, learn as much as you can from as many people as possible, and make it happen and be ready.
Thank you for listening to the Motivated to Lead podcast. Please subscribe on iTunes. You can also see a video version of this interview at motivatedtolead.com. This podcast is brought to you by SEMA Partners, helping you find your next great leader.